What's up, everyone? This is the Next Take podcast with Mikel and
And Tanyka.
where we have conversations on different topics. So, Tanika, what are we going to be talking about today?
So we're doing the second episode of Black History Month, and today we're going to be talking about Barack Obama.
All right, nice.
Yeah,
Let's, let's get to it.
okay. All right. Let's get into it. So Barack Obama, who was
Mm-hmm,
born on August 4th, 1961,
mm-hmm,
in Honolulu, Hawaii, is the 44th president of the United States. He was president from 2009 until 2017, and the first African American to hold the office. Before winning the presidency, Obama represented Illinois in the U.S. Senate from 2005 until 2008. He was the third African American to be elected to the body since the end of Reconstruction, which I don't know what that is. Sorry. But the Reconstruction happened in 1877. So in
mm-hmm,
2009, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his extraordinary efforts to strengthen international uh, diplom- dip- diplomacy, I'm fine, and cooperation between peoples.
mm-hmm,
So that's cool.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
So a little on his early life. So Obama's father, Barack Obama Sr., was a teenage goatherd, like
Mm-hmm,
goatherd okay, for those people
mm-hmm,
who know Sound of Music, you might have just giggled a little bit inside. In rural Kenya, so he is Kenyan, won a scholarship to study in the United States and eventually became a senior um, economist in the Kenyan government. Obama's mother, S. Ann Dunham, grew up in Kansas, Texas. Didn't know there was. Also, so no, no, here we go. She grew up in Kansas, Texas, and Washington. So she grew up in three different states before her family settled in Honolulu.
mm-hmm,
In 1960, she and Barack Sr. met in a Russian language class at the University of Hawaii and married less than a year later. When Obama was 2 years old, Barack Sr. left to study at Harvard University. So hold on to that because that's going to come back again, Harvard University. Shortly thereafter, in 1964, Anne and Barack Sr. divorced. Obama actually only saw his father only one more time after this, during a brief visit when Obama was only 10 years old. So
okay.
his father seemed to have been absent. Later, Anne remarried, this time to another foreign student named Lolo Sortoro from Indonesia, with whom she had a second child, Maya. Obama lived for several years in Jakarta with
Mm-hmm,
his half-sister, mother, and stepfather. So they
mm-hmm,
moved to Indonesia and lived in Jakarta. So that's like also like kind of cool.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That he also lived out of the States too.
Right.
While there, Obama attended both a government-run school where he received some instruction in Islam
Mm-hmm,
and a Catholic private school where he took part in Christian schooling. Because if you don't know, again, you do learn stuff when you watch 90 Day Fiancé. I never knew Indonesia was actually, there are a lot of, Muslim is a pretty huge faith in Indonesia. Didn't know
right,
that.
right.
So that's probably why. He returned to Hawaii in 1971 and lived in a modest apartment, sometimes with his grandparents and sometimes with his mother. She remained for a time in Indonesia, returned to Hawaii, and then went abroad again, partly to pursue work on a PhD before divorcing Sorotoro in 1980. For a brief period, his mother was aided by government food stamps, but the family mostly lived a middle-class existence. In 1979, Obama graduated from Punahou School, I think is how you say it, which is an elite college preparatory academy in Honolulu.
Hmm.
Then Obama attended, I think it's Occidental College, sorry if I said that wrong, in suburban Los Angeles for 2 years, and then transferred to Columbia University in New York City, where in 1983 he received a bachelor's degree in political science. So we're seeing the politics start to make an appearance in his life.
Mhm.
Influenced by professors who pushed him to take his studies more seriously, Obama experienced great intellectual growth during
Mhm.
college and for a couple of years thereafter. He led a rather ascetic, I think is how you say that word, life and read works of literature and philosophy by William Shakespeare, Friedrich Nietzsche, I think, and Toni
Oh,
Morrison.
oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, who hasn't read Toni Morrison? Come on.
Mhm.
And others.
Yeah.
After serving for a couple of years as a writer and editor for Business International Corporation, which was a research, publishing, and consulting firm in Manhattan, he took a position in 1985 as a
Uh-huh.
community organizer on Chicago's largely impoverished Far South Side. He returned to school 3 years later and graduated magna cum laude in 1991 from Harvard University Law School. So not only did he go to Harvard Law School,
Mhm.
my guy also graduated magna cum laude, which is insane. Like he's exceptionally smart. Um, in case you don't know what that means. But yeah, he's very smart. Um, and he was the first African American to serve as president of the Harvard Law Review.
Oh wow.
So he was president for the first time, not once but twice.
Mhm.
Um, while a summer associate in 1989 at the Chicago law firm of Sidley Austin, Obama had met a Chicago native named Michelle Robinson, who was a young lawyer at the firm, and the two married in 1992. So that
Mhm.
is Michelle. Yeah. After receiving his law degree, Obama moved to Chicago and became an active in the Democratic Party. So we're seeing that happen too.
Mhm.
This part I did not know. This is incredible. He organized Project Vote, which is a drive that registered tens of thousands of African Americans on voting rolls, and that is credited with helping Democrat Bill Clinton win in Illinois and capture the presidency in 1992. So
Wow.
Project Vote, which is something I hear about now,
Mhm.
he's the reason for it. Like,
Mm.
that's insane to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's why he's not president. Anyway, the effort also helped make Carol Mosley Braun, who was an Illinois state legislator, who was also the first African American woman elected into the US Senate. So that's also really good. During this period, Obama wrote his first book. So he was an author long before he was a president. So he wrote his first book and saw it published. That was called, it's a memoir. It's called Dreams from My Father, and this was
Mhm.
published in 1995. It's the story of Obama's search for his biracial identity by tracing the lives of his now deceased father and his extended family in Kenya.
Mhm. Mhm.
Obama lectured on constitutional law at the University of Chicago and worked as an attorney on civil rights issues. So he was also part of the civil rights movement as well. So,
Mhm.
I mean, civil rights movement in the modern day sense of things, but yes, like he's
Yeah.
part of that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
In 1996, he was elected to the Illinois Senate, where most notably he helped pass legislation that tightened campaign finance regulations, expanded health care to poor families, and reformed criminal justice and welfare laws. In 2004, he was elected to the U.S. Senate, defeating Republican Alan Keyes in the first U.S. Senate race, in which the two leading candidates were both African American. While campaigning for the U.S. Senate, Obama gained national recognition by delivering the keynote address at the Democratic National Convention in July 2004. The speech wove a personal narrative of Obama's biography with the theme that all Americans are connected in ways, sorry, let me find my spot, in ways that transcend political, cultural, and geographical differences. The address lifted Obama's once obscure memoir onto bestseller lists. And after taking office the following year, Obama quickly became a major figure in his party. A trip to visit his father's home in Kenya in August of 2006 also gained international media attention, and Obama's star continued ascending. His second book, which was titled The Audacity of Hope, which was published in 2006, so 10 years after the last one, a mainstream polemic on his vision for the United States was
Mhm.
published weeks later, instantly becoming a major bestseller. In February 2007, he announced at the old state capitol in Springfield, Illinois, where not Obama, Abraham Lincoln had served as a state legislature, that he would seek Democratic Party's presidential nomination in 2008.
Mm,
Obama's personal charisma, stirring oratory, and his campaign promise to bring change to the established political system resonated with many Democrats, especially young and minority voters.
mm,
On January 3rd, 2008, Obama won a surprise victory in the first major nominating contest, the Iowa caucus, over Senator Hillary Clinton,
mhm,
who was the overwhelming favorite to win the nomination. 5 days later, however, Obama finished second to Clinton in the New Hampshire primary, and a bruising and sometimes bitter primary race ensued. Obama won more than a dozen states, including Illinois, his home state, and Missouri, a traditional political bellwether, on Super Tuesday, which was on February 5th. So, yeah, no clear frontrunner for the nomination emerged, however, as Clinton won many states with large populations, such as California and New York. Obama produced an impressive string of victories later in the month, handily winning the 11 primaries and caucuses that immediately followed Super Tuesday, which gave him a significant lead in pledged delegates. His momentum slowed in early March when Clinton won significant victories in Ohio and Texas. Though
mm.
still maintaining his edge in delegates, Obama lost the key Pennsylvania primary on April 22nd. So, like, it's like a hit or miss here. Like, who's going to be? I mean, obviously, we know who the leader of the Democratic Party was going to be, but
Right.
it's like I didn't realize it was just like this really head to head between him and Clinton. Like, I did not know that. Um,
Yeah,
Crazy.
I think is it well, Bill Clinton?
No, Hillary.
Hillary. Oh, okay.
Hillary Clinton. Yeah. No, because
I
Bill
don't
Clinton
remember.
was done at that point.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't remember. I don't remember Hillary Clinton versus Barack Obama.
No, because I never have. They're part of the same party, so
Okay.
they're basically fighting of who's going to be the leader of the Democratic Party, thus being the presidential nominee for the
Mm,
Democratic Party.
I see. I see. Okay.
Yeah, so they're like that's the challenge is between the parties at this point
Mm,
of who's going to be on top.
right.
See,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Um, so 2 weeks later, he lost a close contest in Indiana, but won the North Carolina primary by a large margin, widening his delegate lead over Clinton.
Hmm.
She initially had a big lead in so-called superdelegates, which is a Democratic Party officials allocated votes at the convention that were unaffiliated with state primary results. But with Obama winning more states and actual delegates, many peeled away from her and went to Obama. So on
Mm,
June 3rd, following the final primaries in Montana and South Dakota, the number of delegates pledged to Obama surpassed the total necessary to claim the Democratic nomination. So that's
right.
how it happened.
Right.
On August 27th, Obama became the first African American to be nominated for the presidency by either major party and went on to challenge Republican Senator John McCain for the country's highest office.
Mm.
Okay, so McCain criticized Obama,
Mhm.
who knows why, still a first-term senator, as being too inexperienced for the job. Really,
Interesting.
really, because of who you're going to end up. You know what? We're not talking about him. We're not
I
talking
mean,
about him.
yeah,
But you know what I mean? It's actually
yeah,
hilarious to hear someone say that.
yeah. The thing is that he was probably trying to do some type of strategy to mudsling Obama, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
yes.
Well, because the thing is, what I will say is he was the youngest
Mhm,
to be president,
mhm,
of all presidents, and I do get that. Um, I guess, yeah, even younger than George Washington because he was pretty young, mid old then. You know what? Forget it. But it's I understand that, and maybe, yes, he would have been maybe more inexperienced than other people, but for me, it's just obviously, like, no one knows what was going to happen in the next 8 years, but
mhm.
it's just funny to me to say someone is inexperienced as a politician when do we see who it is now who had no experience in politics?
Right.
At least Obama had some experience. Like he actually went to school for political science. He was a senator. He was involved in this. He was a lawyer. He was at least going through the channels of what someone would go through to potentially be in politics. What the hell did Oompa Loompa do?
Mhm.
Just yelled you're fired on a show. And that's not the only thing he did, but you know what I mean? He just wasn't a politician. So it's just really funny to hear someone say that, even like again, not knowing what was gonna happen 8 years from this point is
Mhm.
it's really funny to me. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It's just really funny. But
Right.
anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about though, guys. We're gonna have fun. That's what we're here to talk about. So yeah, he would say he was inexperienced for the job. To counter, Obama selected Joe Biden, as we know, a veteran senator from Delaware who had a long resume of foreign policy expertise to be his vice presidential running mate. Obama and McCain waged a fierce and expensive contest. Obama, still bolstered by a favor of popular support,
Mhm.
eschewed federal financing of his campaign and raised hundreds of millions of dollars. Um, yeah, millions of dollars. Sorry, where did I go? Oh, yeah. Much of it coming in small donations and over the internet from a record number of donors. Obama's fundraising advantage helped him buy massive amounts of television advertising, which I definitely remember seeing a lot of that, and organize deep grassroots organizations in key battleground states and in states that had voted Republican in previous presidential cycles.
Mm. Okay.
The two candidates offered a stark ideological choice for voters. Obama called for a swift withdrawal of most combat forces from Iraq and a restructuring of tax policy that would bring more relief to lower and middle class voters. McCain said the United States must wait for full victory in Iraq and charged that Obama's rhetoric was long on eloquence but short on substance. Just weeks
Mm.
before Election Day, Obama's campaign seized on the economic meltdown that had resulted from the catastrophic failure of U.S. banks and financial institutions in September, calling it a result of the Republican free market driven policies of the 8 year administration of George W. Bush.
Mhm.
Yikes.
Mhm.
Um, Obama won the election, capturing nearly 53% of the popular vote and 365 electoral votes, which, if we recall, they need 270, right? Uh,
Mm.
270 for the votes. That's what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Two
he
cents.
got 270, I believe, and he got
Yeah,
365.
yeah, yeah, that's the yeah, I just yeah, okay, yeah.
That's pretty
So
awesome.
yeah, it is.
Not only did he hold all of the states that John Kerry had won in 2004's election, but he also captured a number of states, including Colorado, Florida, Nevada, Ohio, and Virginia. States that are pretty red, especially Florida. Um,
Time, yeah.
well, not even just at the time, even now, they're red states.
Hmm.
um, that the Republicans had carried in the previous two presidential elections. On election night, tens of thousands gathered in Chicago's Grant Park to see Obama claim victory. Shortly after his win, Obama resigned from the Senate, obviously. On January 20th, 2009, hundreds of thousands turned out in Washington, D.C. to witness Obama taking the oath of office as president. I was watching on the TV. So,
Mm.
did you watch his inauguration? Do you
Uh,
remember?
I think I did. I think I watched a little bit. I didn't watch the full thing. I think I was somewhere doing something, but yeah, yeah, I remember it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember being home that day,
Mhm,
um, from school. Um, 2009. I guess I would have been still in high school. Um, I
mhm,
remember watching it and yeah, it was pretty amazing to see.
mhm,
Um, I mean, I haven't really watched a lot of inaugurations after that. Didn't watch Joe. Oh, I mean, I kind of partially watched Joe Biden's.
mhm,
Obviously, I don't give a shit about Trump, but sorry, sorry.
mhm,
But yeah, and I didn't watch any prior to that, but it's it's something that you won't really forget, especially as a Black person, to see
mhm,
someone
mhm,
who looks like me
mhm,
um being sworn in. It's pretty cool.
mhm,
Um, so in an effort to improve the image of the United States abroad, which many believed had been much damaged during the Bush administration, yeah, Obama took a number of steps that indicated a significant shift in tone. He signed an executive order that banned excessive interrogation techniques, ordered the closing of the controversial military detention facility in sorry, give me a minute. Ooh,
mhm, mhm,
Guantanamo Bay. Yeah, Guantanamo Bay. Yeah, I
mhm,
know I'm saying it somewhat okay. Anyway, that's in Cuba. Within a year, a deadline that was actually not met, um, proposed a fresh start to strained relations with Russia, and he traveled to Cairo in June of 2009, which I remember, to deliver a historic speech in which he reached out to the Muslim world. Largely as a result of these efforts, Obama was awarded the 2009 Nobel Peace Prize, which you talked about before. Yet some left-wing critics complained that he actually had adopted and even escalated most of the war and national security policies of his predecessor. Yuck. Indeed,
mhm, mhm,
when Obama accepted the Nobel Peace Prize in December, he said, quote, "Evil does not exist in the world, and there will be times when nations, acting individually or in concert, will find the use of force not only necessary but morally justified."
mhm,
Notwithstanding that tough talk, there were others who criticized Obama for issuing only a mild condemnation for the Iranian government's crackdown on pro-democracy dissidents following a disputed election in June of 2009, which I vaguely remember as well. Moreover, the Obama administration's handling of national security was questioned by some when a Nigerian terrorist trained in Yemen was thwarted in an attempt to bomb an airliner headed for Detroit on Christmas Day 2009. That I remember as well. Do you remember that?
yeah, I remember that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Um, After enjoying a soaring popularity early in his term, Obama became the target of increasing criticism, which, I mean, I hate to talk about, but it is part of,
Yeah,
unfortunately, I do,
yeah.
yeah, people do criticize him.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. During this term, a lot of people did criticize him.
yeah,
I mean, that happens to like every
every
president,
sitting
really,
president, except for
or
Trump, apparently he can do no wrong.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So,
um, but yeah, largely due to the slow pace of economic recovery and continued high unemployment rates, but also because of the widespread opposition to Democratic efforts to reform healthcare insurance policy, the signature issue of the Obama presidential campaign. Because that's the thing. I mean, the unemployment rate was high,
mhm,
but we were also uh, just coming off, or maybe even still in the middle of a recession at the time.
mhm,
Um, Canada was being hit as well with that recession, so it was just bad timing,
mhm.
I guess is really the only thing I can say, in terms of his presidency, but I don't know.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah,
I I said I'll agree with you on that one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Obama had entered office promising to bring an end to the partisan squabbling and legislative gridlock, yet, in the wake of the failure to obtain any real bipartisan cooperation, congressional Democrats, according to Republicans,
Yeah.
had settled into governing without substantive Republican involvement.
Mm,
Um, okay, where am I? Democrats, according to Republicans, had settled into governing without substantive Republican involvement. Republicans, on the other hand, according to Democrats, and had become the party of no,
mm,
sure, seeking to obstruct Democratic legislative initiatives without offering real alternative proposals. It was in this highly polarized environment that Obama and the Democrats attempted to enact health care insurance reform.
mhm,
So we'll talk about that a little bit. So, healthcare reform, popular with Americans during the election, became less so as legislatures presented the proposed changes to their constituents in town hall meeting in summer of 2009 that sometimes erupted into shouting matches between those with opposing viewpoints. We're going to be talking about the Tea Party a little bit here. Didn't
mhm,
know that still existed. So it was this time that the populist Tea Party movement, again, I thought that was only in the 1700s, comprising libertarian-minded conservatives, emerged in opposition to the Democratic health care proposals, but more generally in opposition to what they saw as excessive taxes and government involvement in the private sector.
mhm,
Republicans across the board complained that Democratic proposals constituted a, quote, government takeover of health care that would prove too costly and mortgage the future of generations to come. The opposition to the Democratic plans was virtually lockstep. Um, so we're not going to go into a lot of the healthcare stuff. Let's just say, though, they were able to create something for the healthcare
mhm,
under about which, the whole also Obamacare, I do think I'll talk about at some point.
mhm,
I can't remember if I do or not, but the Obamacare of it all, that all started, like, it was actually not called Obamacare. It's
mhm.
called something else, which I'll see if I can find.
Is it Medicare or something like that?
No, no, no. It's not called Medicare. It's a much longer name. See if I can find it. Um, yeah, because it's a lot to talk about, but whatever the term, the name of it is, Obamacare was actually something that started from someone else started it, and it was actually being like and about it,
Mhm,
but it obviously like it's stuck
mhm,
in calling it Obamacare. So thought that was pretty cool. So they were working on the legislation. So the legislation would, once all its elements had taken effect over the next 4 years, prohibit denial of coverage on the basis of pre-existing conditions
mhm,
and extend health care to some 30 million previously uninsured Americans,
mhm,
which is that's a lot of people. Um, The bill made the attainment of health care insurance mandatory for all citizens, but it also called for a tax increase on the wealthiest Americans that would largely bankroll subsidies for premium payments for families earning less than $80,000 per year.
mhm,
Moreover, the bill promised a tax credit to small businesses that provide coverage for their employees. In some corners, the bill was considered an unconstitutional government takeover, which I
Mhm.
don't understand how that is, of an industry representing one-sixth of the economy, and in others, it was hailed a legislation as monumental, as
Mhm.
that which had come out of the civil rights movement. Um, so responding to the economic crisis that emerged in 2008 and prompted a rescue of the financial industry with up to $700 billion in
Wow.
government funds. Obama, aided by large Democratic majorities in both the Senate and the House of Representatives, pushed through Congress a $787 billion stimulus package.
Mhm.
By the
Mhm.
third quarter of 2009, the plan had succeeded in reversing the dramatic decline in GDP, resulting in 2.2% positive growth on a per annum basis. Unemployment, however, had also risen from 7.2% when Obama entered office to about 10%. So that's obviously not good. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah. And Republicans complained that the stimulus package cost too much money, having swelled the federal deficit to $1.42 trillion.
Mhm.
Wow. Still, it appeared that the US economy was recovering, albeit slowly. The president could proudly point to the dramatic turnaround of General Motors. In June
Mhm.
2009, GM had lapsed into bankruptcy, necessitating a $60 billion government rescue and takeover of about three-fifths of its stock. But by May 20,
Mhm.
yeah. But by May 2010, the auto manufacturer employing a new business plan had shown its first profit in 3 years. Like GM is huge. So that's good to hear. Obama looked forward to recovery summer, anticipating the payoff of the massive federal investment in
Mhm.
infrastructure, um, improvement programs aimed at creating jobs and stimulating the economy. But as the summer of 2010 progressed, the prospects of the economy seemed to dim. Not good. As unemployment stagnated, partly because of the demise of temporary jobs tied to the decennial consensus, some economists feared that a second recession was approaching, while others argued that the stimulus package had been insufficient.
Mhm.
I mean, spoiler alert, another recession didn't happen, but yeah. So let's see where we're at now. Just gonna Obama was able to claim another major legislative victory, however, in July, when Congress passed 60 to 39 in the Senate and 237 to 192 in the House, the most sweeping financial regulation since the New Deal. Among other statutes, the bill established a Financial Consumer Protection Bureau within the Federal Reserve, empowering the government to take over and shut down large troubled financial firms, created a council of federal regulators to monitor the financial system, and subjected derivatives, the complex financial instruments that were partly responsible for the financial crisis, to government oversight. So, yay, win.
Mhm.
Um, See if you remember this, because I remember this. The spring and summer of 2010 would be remembered more, though, for a massive oil spill that dragged on for months in the Gulf of Mexico, the largest marine oil spill in history. Do you remember that?
I don't think I remember that. I don't.
Really?
Yeah.
It was a
Maybe 'cause I wasn't.
massive oil spill.
Yeah, maybe because I wasn't paying attention to the news back then. Might not
Yeah, I
was.
was paying more attention to the news back then, but it was massive oil spill, like
Uh,
massive. Um, The disaster began with an explosion and fire that killed 11 workers and led to the collapse and sinking on April 22nd of the Deepwater Horizon drilling platform, some 40 miles, 60 kilometers, off the coast of Louisiana. The resulting oil spill endangered marine life, fouled beaches, and brought a halt to fishing in a huge area. The Obama administration's efforts to address the spill were criticized by some as ineffectual, as most Americans felt helpless in the face of the largely futile ongoing efforts by BP, the well's owner, to staunch the spill. Ironically, in a policy shift just weeks before the spill, the president had proposed ending a longstanding ban on offshore oil exploration from northern Delaware to central Florida, as well as in some other locations.
Mhm.
In the spill's wake, however, the Interior Department instituted a 6-month moratorium or new deepwater drilling that included halting operations at more than 30 existing exploratory wells. Before the Deepwater Horizon oil spill was finally contained and the well capped in July of 2010, it was estimated that some 4.9 million barrels of oil had been released into the water.
Wow.
Like, just tragic. For all of Obama's efforts at rapprochement with much of the world, he, like George W. Bush, was a wartime president, even though he said, we're going to get the troops out. As we kind of know, that's not exactly what happened. The situation in Iraq continuing to improve and the target date for ending U.S. combat operations there approaching. Um, in February 2009, Obama increased the U.S. military presence in Afghanistan to 68,000 troops. Throughout his presidential campaign, he had argued that the focus of U.S. military efforts should be in Afghanistan rather than Iraq. And with the resurgence of the Taliban in Afghanistan, the military requested that Obama deploy an additional 40,000 troops there. So I guess on top of the 68,000 that were already there. So in August on schedule, the U.S. combat mission in Iraq came to a close. Though
Oh,
50,000 American troops remained, the majority of U.S. forces had been withdrawn. In a televised national address marking the end of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Obama stressed the importance of American and NATO efforts in Afghanistan, even as corruption continued to undermine the faith of the Afghan people in their government. The run-up to the fall's midterm congressional election, Obama found himself snagged in controversy over whether an Islamic center and mosque should be built in New York City, near the site of September 11th, 2001 attacks. So, just to make it make sense, I think people wanted to open a mosque in New York City, which, whatever, that's fine.
uh-huh.
But they wanted to do it right near September 11th, where some people might have a really big issue with that, seeming as the reason for the attacks was because of extremists in the Islamic faith. So, like, I don't know what the right thing would have been to do because I can see both sides.
Uh-huh.
So, I don't know.
Uh,
Um, Initially, the president reacted by strongly supporting the constitutional right of Muslim Americans to freedoms of religious expression, but then he seemed to waffle regarding the location
mm,
of the mosque. Sorry. All of this came at a time when polling showed that nearly one-fifth of Americans incorrectly believed that Obama was Muslim, up from about one-tenth a year earlier. Sorry. So, I mean, I actually thought the same thing, not gonna lie. I
uh-huh.
thought that that was the case because of his Kenyan background. Um, I don't know if the population of Kenyans that are Muslim, but I think a pretty big population are. So I thought that that was my reasoning for thinking he was, but I guess he's not.
Uh,
Um, as Americans headed into the midterm election of 2010, much of the electorate was characterized as angry and pessimistic. The struggling economy and persistent high level of unemployment were the central issues in an election that was widely viewed as a referendum in the first 2 years of Obama's presidency. In the weeks before the election, Obama campaigned hard for Democratic candidates and sought to convince voters of the importance of his administration's accomplishments, including staving off what some economists believed was a potential economic depression. So I would agree he happened to, you know, not make it worse. Um, he also emphasized that the change he had promised as a presidential candidate, as well as the Democratic Congress's efforts to stimulate the economy, would take time, which that's the
Mm,
thing. A lot of people want the actions to be done right now, right now, right now.
right.
That's just not, like, that can't happen. And I think it's maybe common sense is the wrong term to use, but I
Mhm,
think it's common sense to realize that some of the things, especially when you're talking about the economy,
mhm,
is going to take a lot of time to
right.
fix that. I mean, look at the Great Depression.
Mhm,
That was a decade. And even after that decade, it still took time to get things back to normal, whatever normal was.
mhm,
So it's like you have to have patience for things. Yes, it sucks, but you have to have patience. Like, things just don't just happen. Um, and again, that's why I say, like, I think with Obama, with the recession, it was just timing. I do wonder what things would have looked like for him where the economy was concerned,
mhm.
if he wasn't pretty much smack dab in the middle of that recession, um, in his first term. So anyway, um, in the event, many of the independents who had supported Obama and other Democrats in the 2008 election swung back to the Republicans, and voters returned control of the House to the Republicans, who gained some 60 seats, the biggest swing since 1948. Um, so
Yeah.
good for them, I guess. Congress extended medical benefits and compensation for the rescue workers who had responded to September 11th attacks. So, moreover, the Senate ratified a new strategic arms reduction talks, also START is the abbreviation, treaty with Russia, one of the administration's top foreign policy goals. So that was also happening. On the other hand, a Republican filibuster in the Senate stalled the Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors (DREAM) Act, um, which would have granted eventual citizenship to, I hate the word aliens brought to the states. So
Hmm,
we had these different things that was going on. The medical relief for the rescuers of September 11th, which I think is fantastic, and then the the other stuff with Russia, and then that. Um, on April 4th, Obama officially announced that he would seek re-election. So we're getting into the second term. Less than a month later, on May 1st, the president made a dramatic late night Sunday television address to inform the world that that U.S. Special Forces had killed Al Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden. I
mhm.
remember you saying you didn't actually see the address. Did you see the address?
Uh, I didn't see the address. No, I
No?
didn't see it at all. No,
I
no.
remember seeing the address. And I just remember him, because if anyone's ever seen the address, which is usually done in the same um, room, which I can't remember the name of the room right now, um, he's kind of seen just kind of just walking up to the podium, and you're like, you're already told, like, the address that's being said is it's huge. We know it's huge. We don't know what it is, but we know it's huge. And he's kind of seeing just walking, and you're like, what's gonna happen? What's he gonna say? And then he says it, and I'm just like, oh my God. Like, he did like what I would have considered the impossible because this is a man that Americans have been searching for and looking for following September 11th. And holy shit, he did it. And like obviously he physically isn't doing it, but again, if you know anything, like if you watch Scandal, they're there in the little room making the orders and because they're commander in chief and I'm like, oh my God, like he did it. So like
Mhm.
it was really cool to see because I feel like that's a moment in history is him like doing what I figured. I think a lot of people figured was the impossible. So,
Mm.
um, so yeah, it was done in a firefight in a compound in Abbottabad. Sorry if I said that wrong. Pakistan,
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
far from the Pakistani capital of Islamabad. Um, so U.S. forces took custody of the body, which they buried at sea. So he's long gone. He's
Hmm.
fish food, y'all, and
Yeah.
confirmed bin Laden's identity through DNA testing. Justice has been done, Obama said. Americans understand the cost of war, yet as a country, we will not tolerate our security being threatened, nor stand idly by um, when our people have been killed. We will be relentless in defense of our citizens and our friends and allies. I mean, again, I also want to be realistic. Osama bin Laden being killed, yes, I think is a victory. But at the same time, it's like there's someone else in the wings waiting to replace him. Like it never ends.
Mm.
So there's
Right.
also that part of it that's also sobering, but hey,
Hmm.
Osama bin Laden is dead, so whatever.
Right.
Yay. Okay. Um, although he effectively had been campaigning for weeks, Obama officially kicked off his reelection bid with speeches in Ohio and Virginia on May 5th, 2012. Just a few days later, on May 9th, he made headlines again when he revealed a change in his stance on same-sex marriage, saying during a television news interview, quote, "At a certain point, I've just concluded that for me personally, it is important for me to go ahead and affirm that I think same-sex couples should be able to get married." Earlier in the week, Vice President Biden had expressed strong support for same-sex marriage in another television appearance, which is so incredible and so heartbreaking what is gonna probably happen and is looming for the queer community right now in the States. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah. Um, in June, responding largely to the Senate's earlier failure to pass the DREAM Act, so that's that Alien Act 1, the
Right.
Obama administration made an important policy change, generally ending the immediate deportation of illegal immigrants who had come to the United States as children. Again, also really sad just kind of knowing like what's happening right now in the States because of Trump and his
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
about him doing the birthright crap right now, right?
Mhm.
And this
Yeah. I
yeah,
heard about it. Yeah.
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 So
It's stupid. Yeah.
it's really sad. Like my mom actually was watching a movie. I didn't watch it, but she was watching a movie and she told me about it after the fact of a guy who was from Korea
Mhm.
and he was adopted. And I guess apparently prior to 2000 or 2001, when you're doing the adoption papers, there's like something you have to do or some sort of form you have to fill out. And if you don't, like it could jeopardize later on. And that's what happened in this case in this movie where this wasn't filled out and he was potentially going to be deported. His birth mom was dead. He had no family. All intents and purposes, he's American. And they were going to deport him. He was in a relationship with somebody. She was going to have a baby. She had a child previously who saw him as her father. Like, apparently, it was just like my mom's like watching this movie, kind of being like, it's gonna be a happy ending. Like it's gonna be a happy ending. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. And it wasn't. He ended up getting deported back to a country that he hasn't been in since he was very little and has no one. And I said to my mom and was like, it's not gonna be a happy ending because in reality, there is no happy ending for most people in this situation right now.
Mhm,
And it's it's really sad, and I think it should hopefully open people's eyes of like, this is what people are going through, being torn apart from the country that they know
mhm.
on a legality. Anyway, I'll come off my soapbox. Hmm. Um, Although the policy did not embrace the pathway to citizenship promised by the DREAM Act, it granted a 2-year reprieve from deportation and the opportunity to seek a work permit to those age 30 and under who had immigrated before age 16, had been in the country at least 5 years, yeah, did not have a criminal record or pose a security threat, and were either students or high school graduates or had served in the military. So that was the guideline that they had um, to get that 2-year reprieve. Immigration was in the headlines again later in the month when the Supreme Court struck down 3 provisions of Arizona's controversial 2010 immigration law, but upheld its centerpiece, quote, "show me your papers" provision, which required police to check the legal status of anyone they stop for another law enforcement concern if they reasonably suspect that the person is in the country illegally, which is really problematic. That's just gonna create like racial bias as well.
Yeah. I
Um,
feel like it will create, like, some type of racial bias, like you just said.
yeah, like you're
Yeah.
carding people basically, which is
Mhm, mhm,
something even here, I think I think you can card again, but back I remember when my ex-husband was still here. I think it was the following year, so maybe 2016, 2015, 2016. The here, police weren't allowed to card anymore, um, for a short period, but, I think they went back to normal on that, but I'm not sure. So Obama applauded the court's rejection of 3 other provisions of the law, including one that had made it a crime for illegal immigrants to seek work, but he expressed concern that the upheld provision could result in racial profiling, kind of like I just said. Both campaigns were spending fortunes in what was projected to be the most expensive presidential campaign in history. So this was Obama's second presidential election. Um, The first since the creation of the public financing system, in which neither candidate accepted public funds and the spending limitations that went with them. Romney, because I think he was up against Mitt Romney, and the Republican Party, as well as Obama and the Democrats, each raised about $1 billion in donations, totals that did not include the tens of millions spent by super PACs, the political action committees that, as a result of the Supreme Court's 2010 decision and Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, were allowed to accept unlimited donations from wealthy individuals, corporations, and unions, provided that the PACs operated independently of the candidate's campaign.
mm,
Um, so yeah. Romney also promised to revoke the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, which he referred to. Okay, this is it. I think I was talking about this before, about the Obamacare.
mhm,
So he promised to revoke Romney, the Patient Protection Affordable Act, Care Act, which he referred to derivatively as,
mhm,
quote, Obamacare. So it was a Republican who the Republicans hate Obamacare, as we know. It's a Republican who coined the term Obamacare for something that it was never called before, and it stuck. It's now Obamacare, whatever.
mhm,
Not officially, but that's what we know it as. A term that the president proudly owned as he trumpeted the benefits of the act on the campaign trail. reversing the advantage um, a Republican traditionally had enjoyed on defense and security issues. Obama repeatedly noted the elimination of Osama bin Laden on his watch in his second campaign. He also highlighted his successful removal of American forces from Iraq and his promise to remove U.S. troops from Afghanistan by 2014, which he did do.
Hmm.
Am I right with that? Like he did do that as well.
Yeah, he
He
did do
did.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so Romney stole Obama's momentum and re-energized his campaign on October 3rd with a commanding performance in the first presidential debate, in which he showed himself to be the president's equal in terms of stature and presence. To some ears, Obama's plea for patience with his policies sounded more apologetic, and his performance was generally agreed to have been lackluster. I don't know.
Hmm.
I didn't watch the debate, so whatever. Biden breathed new life into the Democratic effort by taking the offensive in his debate with the Republican vice presidential nominee, Wisconsin Representative Paul Ryan. Never heard of him. Have you heard of him?
Paul
Paul
Ryan.
Ryan?
Uh,
No?
no, I never heard of him at all.
Okay. Um, he, hmm, a key spokesperson for some of the most conservative elements within his party.
Hmm.
Obama regained his stride in the second town hall style debate,
Hmm.
um, where by engaging more forcefully with Romney, as he would again in the third and final presidential debate. So,
Hmm.
y'all, we literally had one debate with Trump and Kamala
Hmm.
Harris, and here they had like three. Like,
Yeah,
what the
it's
hell?
it's because like.
Technically, he had two. Trump had two,
Hmm.
fine,
Hmm.
but there's only one with Kamala Harris, and then the
Because
vice presidential debate. That was it.
back then, I don't think like the Republicans or Democrats were worried about too much about like who was losing and who was winning.
Mm.
They did it just for the country. They didn't do it for themselves. Where basically I felt like Donald Trump was
Was doing it
basically
for
the big.
himself. It's a
Yeah,
win-lose for him.
yeah,
Because I
yeah.
don't think that would have been the case with Kamala Harris.
Hmm.
But with him, yes, because
Hmm.
that's kind of was you could tell was his what he was trying to say behind the words was, you know, I don't want to lose, so we're not going to do another one.
Hmm.
There's no need to do another one. Okay, like that was like him, and not only that, like again, I can't compare just because I didn't see um I didn't even see his debates with Hillary Clinton either, but
Hmm.
um it also felt very performative, which is
Hmm.
great for someone like me who likes to see drama,
Hmm.
but that's just not the point of it though, you know? Is the point is to get your points across, your policies across, and how you're going to make things better. I'm not talking about people eating cats and dogs and, like, anyway, we don't need to rehash that. If you want to hear more, you can go to that episode where we talk about it. So, in the final weeks of the campaign, the candidates primarily focused on a handful of battleground states whose electoral votes it was believed would determine the outcome of a razor close election in the Electoral College. In the last week of October, so I was gonna say just trigger warning, we're gonna talk about some things that, you know, for some people might hit really hard and might,
Hmm.
so just pre forewarning.
Hmm.
In the last week of October, Sandy, a hurricane turned superstorm that had ravaged parts of the Caribbean, brought widespread destruction to the East Coast and mid-Atlantic states. New York City and New Jersey were particularly hard hit, and the image of Obama and New Jersey's Republican governor, Chris Christie, up to that point, one of the president's most vocal critics, touring devastated areas in his state and bringing promises of rapid aid was a remarkable demonstration of bipartisan leadership by both men. Like Hurricane Sandy, like was nuts.
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that in the East Coast. It was just nuts.
Mhm.
And like I don't know if you saw any of like the images from Hurricane Sandy, but I remember because again, this was still in the age of Jersey Shore, and I think it was towards the end. I think Jersey Shore was already done, but I think it had only been done for like a year at the most at that point. And I remember they did a special for that and kind of showcasing the boardwalk, and this the devastation was insane. So,
Mhm.
um, kind of seeing how a president is going to come in and shape that and how they're going to handle that, I think is really important.
Mhm.
Um, and Donald Trump has had his moments too.
Mhm.
Um, there was a hurricane or something that hit during his first president presidency as well that I mean, I think he handled okay for the most part. One second. Just chew my Ricola. Um, on November 6th, 2012, Obama won a narrow victory in the national popular vote, but triumphed in almost all of the battleground states when to win a second term, garnering 332 electoral votes to Romney's 206.
Mhm.
Like he didn't even stand a chance. Um, quote, democracy in a nation of 300 million hmm, can be noisy and messy and complicated, he said in his election night victory speech, adding that we are not as divided as our politics suggest. We're not as cynical as the pundits believe. We are greater than the sum of our individual ambitions.
Hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
At
Interesting.
the top of the president's agenda in 2013 was the introduction of gun control legislation, an issue that again had taken center stage hmm, in the aftermath of a mass shooting at Sandy Hook School in I think it's Newtown, Connecticut, not Newton, Connecticut, but Newtown, um, on December 14th, 2012, which resulted in the deaths of 20 children and 6 adults. And as well, I think a lot of us remember, the shooter also killed himself and his mother. Killed his mother before he went to the school, and then yeah. Um, Obama called upon Congress to enact legislation that would institute universal background checks for gun purchases, ban the sales of assault weapons, and high capacity, which is more than 10-round magazines, provide for greater protection in schools, and place a renewed focus on treating mental illness,
Mhm.
um, which I think is, yeah, that's very important. Um, and I remember the Trump way of dealing with school shooters was, well, put guns in the classrooms because that's the way to deal with the situation because potentially a child who's already in the school
Mhm.
can't get access to a locked gun. Like this child,
Mhm.
because he's pretty much a child when he did this. Um, okay, just an adult. He was able to get into a locked gun case that did not belong to him. It was, I think, his mother's gun, and he was able to do and wreak the havoc that he did. I just don't understand Trump and his nonsense of, I think there should be gun control.
Yeah.
Again, I'm
I
coming from a place where we don't have the right to bear arms, but I think we should. I think that should be happening.
I do think so too.
Yeah, like how many more school shootings? Because again, there has been, unfortunately, just crazy amount of school shootings since Sandy Hook. Um, and nothing is being done to change this. I feel, anyways. Like again,
Mm,
I mentioned watching shows like Fear Thy Neighbor. It's like the common denominator in these situations that could be avoided is people who have guns, whether illegally or non illegally, or they've obtained it illegally. The biggest issue is guns. I just, maybe we need to be a little more stricter with who can have a gun. Just, I'm just saying. I just,
mm,
I don't know. It's ridiculous. Um, anyway, I will come off my soapbox. Okay, so Speaker of the House, I think it's Bonner, responded to Obama's use of executive action by accusing the president of having, quote, repeatedly run an end around on the American people and their elected legislatures, and by threatening to bring a lawsuit against him for misusing his executive powers. Um, so I think this had to do with a bill that they were. Also, this was for the gun control. Um, Obama's response, because don't get it twisted, this man is still a black man. He said, "So sue me." And the combative response is probably not the way to go. But me as a black person, like, yeah, that's how I respond. You want to act like that, then sue me. What you gonna do? You can't do nothing because I'm allowed to say, anyone's allowed to say or try to create something that's gonna make the country safer. Like, why wouldn't you want that? Um, so yeah, so he said that. Um, and that was in early July. His remark aimed at House Republicans. He said, quote, as long as they're doing nothing, I'm not going to apologize for trying to do something.
mm.
Yes, Obama.
Yeah.
Um, which I agree with him.
Yeah.
In early August 2014, Obama carefully sought not to take sides when the fatal shooting of Michael Brown, who was an unarmed African American teenager, by a white police officer resulted in days of civil unrest and protests, fueled by tensions between the predominantly black population of Ferguson, Missouri, a St. Louis, I'm sorry, guys, if I said that wrong. I know Americans are very particular about their city, is how you say it. I'm sorry.
Mhm, mhm,
Suburb, and his predominantly white government and police department. The president did, however, cite the incident in his September speech to the UN as an example of our, quote, our own racial and ethnic tensions, while pointing to the failure of Americans at times to live up to our ideals. On September 19th, there was a scare at the White House when only minutes after um, sorry, after the first family had left the residence, a man leapt the surrounding fence and made his way into the White House. Not gonna lie, when I read this, I thought of the fact that I don't know if you're watching. I'm not,
mhm,
but I'm
mhm,
listening to podcasts who are covering this. The
mhm,
Tupelo documentary on Netflix, where this madman who was an Elvis impersonator sent, was it strychnine or something in the mail direct addressed to Obama. And I thought that that's what they were going to talk about. I'm like, oh shit, is this about Tupelo? No, apparently something else happened.
mm,
Um, but that also happened as well, which is not discussed in this, but that did happen as well. And if you're interested and you want to learn more, you can watch it. But just type in Tupelo, it'll come up on Netflix. Um, so the security breach spewed a congressional hearing that addressed other recent lapses by the Secret Service, and soon afterward, its director, Julia Pearson, resigned because what's happening. On December 2013, a memorial for South African leader Nelson Mandela Obama and Cuban leader Raul Castro has shared a handshake that seemed to offer symbolic new hope for improved Cuban-U.S. relations. On December 17, 2014, after some 18 months of secret negotiations fostered by Canada and the
Mhm.
Vatican, that handshake bore fruit as Obama and Castro simultaneously addressed national television audiences to announce the normalization of relations between the United States and Cuba that had been suspended since January of 1961. Again, Obama did what I think a lot of people would have thought was the impossible. Because, I mean, I don't think Trump is really doing much to help that relationship between America and Cuba now, but like Obama did the goddamn impossible,
Mhm.
you know? So, quote, we will end an outdated approach that for decades has failed to advance our interests, Obama said. Um, sorry. I'm just trying to have, okay, listen to it. In December, Obama's response to police violence was again questioned after a grand jury failed to indict a New York City policeman for his responsibility in the death of Eric Garner. And this Eric Garner, he was the unarmed African American man who died after having a chokehold applied to him during his arrest on Staten Island in July. I think again, I don't know about you, Mikel, but I've definitely seen this video of him being killed and watching him being killed.
Mhm.
Um, the president and New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio established a task force charged with improving relations between minority communities and police, but many of those around the country who had taken to the streets to proclaim that Black Lives Matter felt that
Mhm.
Obama was not doing enough. Black, a black church in Charleston, South Carolina. So what happened was that? Sorry. Yeah, I think there was a riot, so I think I might have cut some of this off, but um in his eulogy for one of the shooting victims, the Reverend Clementa Pickney, Pick, sorry, when I hear Pickney, I hear something different as a Jamaican person, but I think
Mhm.
that's how you say her name, who's a South Carolina state senator. Obama addressed gun control, race relations, and the symbolic impact of the Confederate flag,
Mhm.
which he had represented more than just ancestral pride, because for many it was a reminder of systematic oppression and racial subjugation.
Mhm.
In the wake of the shooting, the flying of the Confederate flag at the state capitol in South Carolina was the object of renewed criticism. And on July 10th, in response to legislative action by South Carolina lawmakers, the flag was removed permanently from the Capitol grounds,
Mhm.
which again, I didn't realize like so much happened during Obama's presidency.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that's another thing.
Yeah, it's
Um,
crazy.
yeah. So Obama's hopes for the removal of discrimination received a huge boost on June 26th when the Supreme Court ruled in Obergefell versus Hodges. The state bans on same-sex marriage and on recognizing same-sex marriages performed in other jurisdictions are unconstitutional under the due process and equal protection clauses of the 14th Amendment. The
Mhm.
ruling thereby legalized the practice of same-sex marriage throughout the country. One day earlier in King versus Burwell, the Supreme Court further solidified the legality of Obamacare by upholding that part of legislation that allowed the government to provide subsidies in poor and middle class citizens in order to help them purchase health care. Lifted by those successes, Obama's approval rating climbed over 50%, 50, for the first time in more than 2 years. In March, Obama welcomed a state visit by Canada's youthful new Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. Yike. Under the circumstances, whose presence created the kind of excitement that had always seemed to attend the charismatic Obama at the beginning of his own tenure in office. The amability between Obama and Trudeau was a far cry from Obama's chilly relationship with Canada's former leader, Conservative leader Stephen Harper. That's
mm,
hilarious. Um, but anyways, um, yeah, I mean, I would agree
mhm,
because I mean, clearly we can get along with the Democrats. The
right.
Republicans, or at least this Republican
I
leader.
mean, it depends.
Ugh.
Depends which Republican leader it is. Like, you're not gonna get like someone like Trump. Uh, I think we need more people like Mitt Romney
Yeah,
or
Mitt
John
Romney, I
McCain.
think is, yeah, I've heard
Yeah,
decent
they're
things
more.
about him
Yeah,
just as a person, you know?
yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like they're more respectable Republicans
Well, they're actual
versus Trump.
politicians.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
versus
the
Trump.
difference.
Yep, yep.
We
Trump
have
is.
Trump who just
Mhm,
is just looking for his next stage, basically. That's
mhm,
what it feels like. He takes this as a joke. I mean, he
mm,
said it much in an interview. God. Long time ago, but he still said it. Anyway,
mhm,
Obama made a trio of historic state visits himself in 2016. In mid March, he became the first sitting U.S. president to visit Cuba in more than 80 years. And in May, the first sitting U.S. chief executive to visit Hiroshima, Japan, the site of the world's first nuclear strike, where the United States had dropped an atomic bomb toward the end of World War II. We've seen the photos that resulted in the deaths of more than 100,000 people. That's a lot of people. Shame on you. We didn't do it. We were peacemakers. We still are.
mm,
America, on the other hand, was just bombing people. So, not good.
mm,
But in his speech at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park, Obama pointedly did not apologize. Well, come on now, for the
mhm,
bombing or call into question U.S. President Harry S. Truman's decision to use nuclear weapons, which I mean, I guess you shouldn't do that. Um, but I'd be questioning Truman, like, why? Like, what was I mean, I know I learned why, but that was a long time ago, so I don't remember why. Did I just age myself? Oops.
mhm,
Anyways, I don't remember why because I learned this when I was 15.
mhm,
But at the same time, it's just why? Why can't we just live in peace?
mhm,
Um, Instead, he sought to emphasize the importance of future without nuclear weapons. Um, which okay, that's great. Hopefully, we can do that. Um, in early May, Interior Secretary Sally Jewell and National Park Service Director Jonathan Jarvis met with local officials to discuss the creation of a national monument commemorating the gay rights movement at the Stonewall Inn, the historic Greenwich Village bar where police and gay rights activists had clashed in 1969. Stay tuned. Come back in June. We're going to be talking about Stonewall. Um, so later that month, U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch announced the Department of Justice's filing of a suit in federal district court in support of the transgender community to block the enforcement of a recently adopted North Carolina state law that required public agencies to, hmm, sorry,
mhm,
to limit the use of restrooms, locker rooms, and changing rooms to persons whose biological sex, as indicated on their birth certificates, corresponds to the sex for which the facility is intended.
mhm,
Um, Gun violence continued to shake the country. In June, Obama and Vice President Biden, hmm, or should we say President Biden now, traveled
mhm,
to Orlando, Florida to meet with survivors and families of victims of the mass shooting earlier that month at the Pulse nightclub, the deadliest such event in modern U.S. history. 49 people were killed and 50 others were wounded in the attack by a lone gunman on the vibrant center for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBTQ social life. Less than a month later, on June 7th, in downtown Dallas, as a peaceful protest against the shootings earlier in the week of African American men by police in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and suburban St. Paul, Minnesota, was winding to a close, or when it was winding to a close, a sniper who was upset by those shootings shot and killed four police officers, along
Mm.
with a rapid transit officer, and wounded several others, which is just, that shouldn't be happening. That shouldn't be happening. Um, so Obama did speak on that. In closing, his farewell address at Chicago's, or I think we're at his, sorry, I think I jumped ahead a little bit here, but yeah. I didn't catch the speech, so unfortunately, but um, now we're kind of at the end here of his presidency. So in closing, his farewell address at Chicago's McCormick Place on January 10th, 2017, Obama said this: "I'm asking you to believe, not in my ability to bring about change, but in yours. I'm asking you to hold fast to that faith written into our founding documents, that idea whispered by slaves and abolitionists, the spirit sung by immigrants and homesteaders and those who marched for justice, that creed reaffirmed by those who planted flags from foreign battleships to the surface of the moon, a creed at the core of every American whose story is not yet written. Yes, we can." Okay.
Mm.
Which he would say a lot. Yes, we can. Especially during his first presidential election, which they didn't talk a lot about here, but we got to hear at the end. Um, so after his presidency, we'll just kind of talk about that a little bit. Having chosen to become the first president since
Mm.
Woodrow Wilson to remain in the Capitol after the end of his term, Obama purchased a 9-bedroom home in the Kalamora
Mhm.
neighborhood with the intention of staying for 2 years so that his younger daughter, Sasha, could complete high school in Washington. Although he indicated at his final press conference that he did not intend to be actively involved in politics, he outlined several developments that could reverse the decision, including systematic discrimination being ratified in some fashion, the creation of obstacles to voting, and efforts to silence the press or dissent. The former president and former first lady received a joint $65 million advance from Penguin Random House's Crown Publishing Group for their respective memoirs. Obama also began undertaking high-paid speaking engagements, including addresses to Wall Street financial firms, which earned him as much as $400,000 an
Mm.
outing, as well as criticism from some corners for his acceptance of extravagant fees, which, listen, the man needs to live. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
supporters counted that those high fees contributed to making it possible for Obama to donate some $2 million to job training programs for low-income residents in the Chicago area. Jackson Park on Chicago's South Side was chosen by the Obama Foundation, which was founded in January 2014, as a location for Obama Presidential Center. Intended as an economic engine for the South Side, nestled in Parkland and dedicated to informing and inspiring future leaders, the center was designed to include a library, museum, athletic facility, and forum for public meetings. It
Mhm.
also was planned to serve as the headquarters for the Obama Foundation and the My Brother's Keeper Alliance, the organization Obama founded in 2014 to provide opportunities for boys and young men of color. The former president also indicated his support for the National Democratic, sorry, I think I cut that off too. Sorry. Okay, we're gonna end that there. But yeah, so I mean he definitely was doing good because I know like
Yeah.
again, I always go back to Scandal because
Mhm.
what else did I watch? Um when we kind of see Fitz at the end of his 2 year or two terms, he too, like you kind of hear the 100 days. They kind of have to stay out of the limelight, out of the focus. Let the president have their 100 days. Like right now,
Mhm,
Trump is in his 100 days, so you kind of do that, and you stay out of the way. He went to Vermont, stayed out
mhm,
of the way, didn't get involved in things. And once his 100 days were over, again, it's a storyline too. So if you know the show, you know the storyline. But after his 100 days is when he's like, all right, I'm going to focus on something that I'm passionate about
mhm,
and and start doing that, even if it is kind of dipping your toes in the politics. Um, that's what you're going to do. Now, again, it's a different situation. Obama didn't grow up in politics. Fitzgerald did in the show, but
mhm.
it was, but it's just like you kind of hear that. And it's like, okay, so is this what they have to do? Like, do they have to steer clear in their first 100 days? Give the new president the time to have that? Again, in the storyline of Scandal, it's very different though, because it's like the next president was his ex-wife. So it was just like, you really need to stay out of the limelight for the 100 days. So it's, yeah, but
Yeah, yeah, I do agree with that
yeah,
100%, what you
yeah.
just
So,
said. Yeah.
and he did good. And I mean, he's still involved in politics.
Mhm,
Again, if paid attention to Twitter, especially during this last presidential election, he was he's been very vocal um about different things. And even outside of that, he's always still pretty vocal about things that he seems very passionate about.
mhm.
So yeah,
Okay. All right.
and that's my president. So yeah,
All right. Yeah. One of the I think most popular presidents in the United States.
I think so.
Yeah, by far. Um, people will say on the other side, Trump is the most popular, but like, um, I would say Obama is, uh, when it comes to his policy and when it comes to his popularity, is um
I think Trump is
pretty good.
popular in a different way, just
Yeah,
because Trump is a figure that we've all known
yeah,
even before Obama.
yeah.
And he's outlandish and out there with some of the things that he says. And,
Hmm.
even if you are not a Trump supporter, which obviously we're not over here on this podcast, but
Right.
um, even if you're not, you're still kind of like, what nonsense is this man going to say now?
Yeah.
What, like, what's he going to do?
Hmm.
And if you kind of felt, at least in his first presidency, where it's just
Hmm.
like,
Hmm. Hmm.
this can't be real.
Hmm.
Like, this guy's a dumbass. So what's happening here?
Right.
This time around, like, you could laugh at it the first time, I feel like
Hmm.
a little bit. This time it's like, I'm not laughing anymore. Like, I'm not laughing. I'm, yeah, not laughing. But yeah, he's more popular, I would say, in just a different way because of who he is and him being very well known. And
Hmm.
obviously having Trump Towers in many major countries and cities. Toronto was one of them, not anymore.
Hmm.
Um, they got rid of him very quickly after his first presidency. We don't want him here. Um, if I walk past it all the time, I would see it there. I don't know what they call it now, but it's not Trump Tower anymore. Um, so yeah, he's just popular a different way. Obama is popular in a way I feel that's like he actually gave a shit about the country, wanted to do good for the country. I also feel like he's like the first president who didn't have like personal scandal.
Hmm.
Like I feel like this is a man who's like, I'm not cheating on my wife. We don't have that.
Hmm.
We've never had that before.
Hmm.
maybe even Biden, I would even say him now too, but
Right.
we never had that before. We've had presidents before him who are getting in scandals and, you know,
Mhm.
having their own personal Monica Lewinsky, which I'm not saying Monica Lewinsky to get on her, like that's a whole story. Um,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
they've all had that. I feel like Obama didn't,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
is good on him.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep it clean slate. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing that was, I would say anything was The Office aged him.
Mm.
Like it
Yeah.
ages everybody who
Yeah.
enters
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It does that to everybody,
Except
due
for
to,
Trump because he doesn't do his job. Like, you know what?
I
I'm
mean,
done. I'm
that's,
done bashing him
yeah. Yeah.
right now for today.
So, yeah, it ages everybody. You can, you're dealing with a lot of stress. You're carrying a country in your hands on an everyday basis, scrutiny, etc. You know,
Hmm.
so yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
every president goes through that, including Trump. I want to say including Trump as well. So even though I
It
do
looks
have
the
some,
same to me.
yeah, oh, you
It
could
looks the
could
same
say
to me.
that.
Man don't look like he aged
Yeah,
because he doesn't
well,
actually do his job.
uh, so
I mean, then again, evil can
yeah,
make anyone look like
yeah,
anyways. But anyways,
but yeah, that's basically all I have to say as well towards
yeah.
this episode. So this ends this episode 74, I believe, right? Of the next
Yeah.
yeah, Next Tape Podcast. The Next Tape Podcast is available now on all podcast platforms. We also have a website called Tanika.
Next take podcast.podpage.io. The
Yeah,
link's in the show notes if I got that wrong.
yeah. And where else are we at? Tanika?
Facebook and Instagram and Next Take Podcast and Twitter and TikTok and Next Take Pod.
You can contact us on an email at mikeltanika@gmail.com. And that is mikeltanika@gmail.com. So we talked about Barack Obama in this episode on this special Black History Month episode. We still have a lot more episodes to go when it comes to Black History Month. I think
Two.
uh,
We have two more.
yeah, two more episodes. Um, and I think Tanika can confirm the next two, or she can
Yeah,
confirm
yeah, yeah.
the next one. Yep.
Yeah, I can do the next two. So,
Yep.
on the 20th, we're going to be talking about the real people behind Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben. Um, Spoiler alert, it's going to be a little harder for me to find any details on Uncle Ben. But anyways, um, and then on the 27th, we'll be talking about Juneteenth.
All right. So that's it.
Hmm.
I am Mikel, and
And I'm Tanika.
we are out until
Uh, Next week.
we. Nice. Peace, guys.
Bye.